The continent of Europe witnessed several changes and transitions throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. The existent social orders were in the process of being changed, in the process of transitioning to new ways of thinking, to new ways of governance. And so, various kinds of changes were taking place in the political sphere, in the religious sphere, in the socio-cultural sphere, even in the economic sphere. And many such changes were taking place because of one event in history. In this lesson, we will be focusing on the age of social change in Europe. And we will also talk about that one political event in history and how it engendered so many kinds of socio-political cultural changes throughout Europe in the 19th century. The French Revolution is the political event that we just talked about. The French Revolution that happened in the 18th century paved the way for radical change in socio-political systems in Europe. Because with the French Revolution, the hallowed estate system was abolished in France. At the same time, the rule of the aristocracy and nobility was contested. In fact, monarchical rule also came to an end in France following the French Revolution. And it is for this reason that the existent social order in France that thrived on feudal privileges was abolished. Now, new ways of thinking paved the way for change in not just France but throughout Europe. French Revolution became synonymous with the ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. And these ideas were so new to the masses that they gained popularity instantly. The road for change had opened up, so to speak, and the masses had started walking on this road towards achieving changes and transitions in different parts of Europe. So this watershed moment that engendered several changes in socio-political systems in Europe was the French Revolution. But not all people in the society had similar responses to the changes that were happening in the society, to the transition that the society was going through. Because many sections of the population in France were of the opinion that the existent social order did not need to change. They were not in favor of change that the French Revolution engendered. Various individuals will always have different responses to the same incident. If you take one example in this regard, you will be able to understand this. Suppose your school is opening after a long vacation. Some of your friends will be very excited to meet their friends in school, to go to school again, but quite a few of your friends might not like the school opening after the vacation. So from this simple incident, we can see how different individuals always have varied responses to the same incident. And the likewise also happened following the French Revolution. The changes that were taking place in the socio-political sphere throughout Europe following the French Revolution now split the population in terms of the individuals' responses. So individuals were following two paths. Well, some people were of the opinion that no changes were required in the society. The existing social order was fine, while others had already begun working on this road towards achieving changes. So let us now briefly talk about the varied responses that individuals had to the changes in the society. Erstwhile European monarchies and kingdoms were dominated by specific religions that became institutionalized as the state religion. Britain favored the Protestant Church of England, while on the other hand, Austria, Spain favored the Roman Catholic Church. So these now became the state religions, and in the erstwhile European monarchies and kingdoms, these state religions held immense powers, because these state religions often dictated how the emperor or the monarch would function. These state religions were further sanctioning the rules and the decrees of the monarchs and emperors, and it is for this reason that the state religions were held sacrosanct or revered in the erstwhile European monarchies and kingdoms. Now, there came into being new groups of people who had varied responses to the changes in the society. We begin our discussion with the liberals. The liberals proposed the toleration of all religions. So they were not in the favor of having one institutionalized state religion. Instead, they believed that there should be toleration as well as harmony among all religions. At the same time, they wanted elected representative governments. So these people were in favor of changes in the society. In the erstwhile monarchies and kingdoms throughout Europe, it were only the monarchs, the emperors, the kings who held immense and absolute power over people. But now the liberals were proposing elected governments. So people would now get to choose their own elected representatives. And at the same time, these elected governments should also remain under the check of well-trained judiciaries. So well-trained judicial officials will be able to take care of various things that were supposed to be performed by these elected governments. But a very important thing that we need to keep in our minds with regard to the liberals is that they did not espouse universal adult franchise. What does this mean? By universal adult franchise, we mean that all citizens of any nation, any region, any territory above a certain age will get to cast their votes, will get to elect their favored representatives. But while these liberals wanted elected governments, they did not espouse universal adult franchise. Instead, franchise rights or voting rights should be given to only the propertied sections of the society. And this is the idea that the liberals proposed. And when we talk about the propertied sections of the society, a very important thing also needs to be mentioned is that women were not a part of this section. So it were only the propertied men who the liberals believed were supposed to enjoy voting rights in the society. Now these propertied men were the wealthy landowners, factory owners, and the liberals wanted to give utmost power to the propertied middle class. After this, we now come to another group that came to be known as the radicals. Now the radicals, as the name suggests, wanted changes in the society which could be brought about in radical manners. They wanted to radically overthrow the existing social order and replace it with very modern as well as democratic systems. So the radicals sought to completely overthrow the existing social order that extended privileges to the aristocracy and the nobility. Now, the existing social order was all about extending feudal privileges to the aristocracy and the nobility. And the aristocracy and nobility kept on amassing more and more wealth by exploiting the landless and the dispossessed. And these radicals wanted to completely overthrow the role or the rule of these people in the society. Now these radicals were in favor of an idea called democracy. So they advocated for voting rights for all, irrespective of property ownership or gender. The liberals were not in favor of democracy. They did not espouse universal adult franchise. But the radicals, on the other hand, wanted to introduce voting rights for all, so that all men and women, so that all sections of the society, irrespective of the wealth they owned, got to exercise their voting rights in order to choose their representatives who would run the governments. But another thing that we need to mention about the radicals is that they were not against the existence of private property entirely. Though the radicals wanted to bring about democracy in the societies, they were not against the existence of private property entirely. All they wanted to do was stop the amassing or accumulation of more and more wealth, the concentration of more and more wealth in the hands of only certain sections of the society. Contrasted to the ideas of change and transition that the liberals as well as the radicals harbored were the ideas of the conservatives. Now the conservatives, as the name suggests, were the conservative sections of the society. And these people were not at all in favor or support of change in the society. But why do you think did these people not want changes in the society? The French Revolution had opened up new avenues for change, new ways of thinking. But why did the conservatives still not want changes to take place in their societies? This is because the conservatives were the ones who thrived on feudal privileges. The conservatives were the aristocrats, the nobles, or in fact the monarchs themselves. And they did not want the existing social order to change. If democracy was introduced, if voting rights were given to all, if the masses now got to exercise their ideas and opinions in the political systems, then their rule would be overthrown. So why would the conservatives want changes? And it is for this reason that the conservatives wanted to exploit the landless and the dispossessed by maintaining the traditional social hierarchy. But over the years, the conservatives now realized that change was imminent in the society. In fact, following the French Revolution, the conservatives were fearing for their lives. They knew that power was now going in the hands of the masses. And so these people became afraid of their lives. And when they saw that socio-political changes could no longer be averted, they now proposed the idea that the society should undergo changes through a slow process. So radical changes, as the radicals wanted in the society, are not what these conservatives wanted. Instead, they wanted a slow and smooth transition to new ways of governance. So here we have discussed various responses that different sections of the society had to the idea of change. The radicals, on the one hand, wanted to bring about changes very radically, very instantaneously. They wanted to completely overthrow the existing social order in the existent monarchies and kingdoms. And so they wanted to introduce democracy. And completely opposed to the ideas of the radicals were the conservative ideas. The conservatives, on the other hand, wanted to keep the existing social order intact, because the existing social order was all about the feudal privileges that the conservatives thrived on. But when they saw the changes were about to happen in the society and they could no longer thwart changes, then they posited their opinion that change should happen through a slow process. And in the middle of the radicals and the conservatives were the liberals. The liberals wanted changes in the society nevertheless, but they did not want universal adult franchise. They wanted to give voting rights only to the propertied men, only to the middle class men in the society. Now, the French Revolution was one of the many political events that brought about major changes throughout Europe through the 18th and the 19th centuries. Now, when we talk about these events, we should also mention the Industrial Revolution that engendered so many changes throughout Europe through many centuries. Because the Industrial Revolution had completely changed the European societies. From the erstwhile agricultural societies, the European regions and territories now became huge industrial and production units. And when new industrial towns and centers sprang up, people from the rural spaces started migrating to the industrial towns and cities. They were coming to these industrial hubs in order to look for employment. And because of this influx of population in the industrialized towns and cities, now took place scarcity of housing facilities. Because it was not easy for those monarchies, kingdoms, or even countries to provide good housing facilities to all these people who were moving from the rural spaces to the industrialized towns and cities in search of employment. At the same time, now took birth many new slums. So people were living in slums in unhygienic and miserable living conditions, because it was not possible to provide proper houses to all these people. And because of this, poor sanitation was an outcome of the growth of slums. So in this way, the Industrial Revolution, though it brought about many changes and can be considered a boon to humankind, brought about many negative effects in the society as well. At the same time, the Industrial Revolution also brought about many changes in the socio-political economic systems. Now, these factory workers, these laborers at the industries were at the root of these production units of these huge factories and industries. Now, these industries and factories brought about so many changes in the society because so many developments were happening in the industrial sphere. New kinds of goods were now being produced, but at the same time, it took a toll on the lives of those factory workers who had to work for very long hours. At the same time, they were not even paid well. They had to work for very long working hours, that too for poor wages. And often, not all the people who migrated from the rural spaces to the industrialized towns and cities got jobs. So unemployment was another thing that brought turbulence and turmoils in not just the lives of these factory workers, but in the society as well. So together, all these things made the factory workers' lives very difficult. So these were the changes that were happening in the society throughout Europe following the Industrial Revolution. Now, who do you think owned these huge factories and industries? Well, these were mostly owned by the liberals as well as the radicals. The liberals and the radicals had access to wealth, and more often than not, they were the factory and industry owners. And these liberals and radicals were also in favor of change in the society, though in different ways. And these people now wanted to maximize their profits. They believed that in order to make the factories run efficiently, they needed to have healthy workers. At the same time, the citizens also needed to be educated. So the factory workers needed to be healthy and the citizens needed to be educated in order to ensure efficient working of the factories. The liberals and the radicals did not believe in the idea of inheriting wealth. Instead, they were in favor of individual enterprise. And so they now wanted to bring about changes in the society by educating the citizens, by having healthy workers, so as to ensure the maximization of their profits as well. Now, following the French Revolution, now came to power as the Emperor of France, the great leader Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, Napoleon Bonaparte himself became the embodiment of the ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity. In fact, the French masses after the French Revolution hailed Napoleon as their hero, as their messiah. And it was believed that Napoleon would bring about so many changes in the French society that France would now take a new birth, so to speak. But Napoleon brought about changes in the French society nevertheless, but he did so through his expansionist policies. When Napoleon was ruling as the Emperor of France, all the neighboring regions of France were either under direct or indirect control of France. And over the years, these neighboring regions saw Napoleon as a despotic intruder. And so Napoleon was eventually overthrown. Napoleon was defeated in the Battle of Waterloo in the year 1815. And this now paved the way for the erstwhile conservative regimes to once again gain power. Because Napoleon Bonaparte, who himself was the embodiment of the ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity, was defeated in 1815, and this now gave a thumbs up to the conservative regimes in several parts of Europe. Now, before proceeding with this lesson, let me ask you a question. When was Napoleon defeated, paving the way for conservative regimes to gain power in Europe? Was he defeated in 1802, 1818 or in 1815 or in 1804? Well, the correct answer is 1815. It was in 1815 and the Battle of Waterloo where Napoleon was defeated, and this now paved the way for conservative regimes to once again re-emerge to power in Europe. Now, among the many things that Napoleon did, many people are of the opinion that Napoleon was a deterrent to the spread of the spirit of nationalism, because Napoleon consolidated France. He ruled France as an emperor, and though he embodied the ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity, he had expansionist and imperialist policies in his mind. Well, this is one of the opinions of many people. But too many people are also of the opinion that no matter what Napoleon did in France, he helped the spread and the growth of the spirit of nationalism throughout Europe. Because the ideals of liberty, equality and fraternity, and most importantly, the spirit of nationalism spread throughout France and several parts of Europe during and following the French Revolution. And Napoleon only provided an impetus to the same. So, though Napoleon ruled as an emperor, he was not like the erstwhile emperors. In fact, his empire was all about changes and transitions in the society. His empire did not believe in the erstwhile notions of power. Napoleon's empire gave Europe a sense of unity. Because in this map we can see how so many places were under Napoleon's direct or indirect control. The region shown in blue in this map shows you the Empire of France. Then this region that is marked in green in this map shows you the states under Napoleon's control. This region that is marked in purple in this map shows you the states allied with Napoleon. And finally, this region that's marked in light orange shows you the states against Napoleon. So Napoleon had influenced such a huge region in France, and with this he gave people a sense of unity. He gave people a sense of belonging, and with this he also helped the spread of the spirit of nationalism. Now throughout the 19th century, the spirit of nationalism made many nationalists, liberals and radicals strive to overthrow monarchical rule in Europe. So the liberals, radicals, nationalists were no longer willing to have the rule of the monarchs as well as the emperors. And what they wanted was change in the society. What they wanted was a new dawn for themselves, so to speak. And so they now started waging various kinds of revolutions, various kinds of movements in order to overthrow the existent social order. And if we are to consider one final political trigger that helped this emergent spirit of nationalism gain prominence among the masses, it was the French Revolution. So through the 18th and the 19th centuries in France, Italy, Germany and Russia, these people became revolutionaries and they fought to establish modern nations. So in this lesson we have talked about the age of social change in Europe. We briefly learnt about how Europe was prior to the French Revolution. Most of the European regions were erstwhile monarchies and kingdoms. And in those monarchies and kingdoms, feudal privileges gave prominence and power only to certain sections of the society. But after social, cultural, political changes were happening throughout Europe, different people had varied responses to this idea of change. We learnt about the liberals, the radicals as well as the conservatives, and how they either wanted or did not want change in the society. Following that, we talked about how Napoleon and the French Revolution helped the growth of the spirit of nationalism in the minds of European masses. Now these Europeans, the nationalists, liberals, radicals to be specific, wanted to overthrow the existent monarchical rules. And they were already beginning to work on the path of change. Now when these people were dissatisfied and filled with discontentment against the existent social order, revolution was inevitable. Having talked about how changes were happening in the society, in a subsequent lesson we will be focusing on one particular socio-economic political philosophy that gained huge prominence and popularity in Europe in the subsequent decades. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.